Our nation's highest debt ever, right after World War II, was just over 100% of the size of our economy, also known as our gross domestic product, or GDP. That means our total debt was about the same level as the nation's entire economic output. Debt levels this high are thought by most economists to be dangerous for sustained periods of time. Future projections show us reaching debt levels that high in just 10 years and continuing to increase steadily in the years to come. Unless we do something about it, the nation's publicly held debt, the money our country borrows from its own citizens, foreigners, and foreign governments, is projected to grow dramatically in the future. The good news is that we can do something about it if we come together and make good decisions about the direction we want to take the country's economy. By planning ahead and making good choices about our future, we can start finding agreement about steps to reduce our deficits in the years ahead. Once our economy is stronger and the recession is behind us, we can follow through on our plans to ensure a strong, sustainable fiscal future for our nation. Our publicly held debt represents the accumulation of each year's budget deficits throughout our nation's history. A deficit simply occurs in any year the government spends more money than it takes in through taxes. Deficit spending is not necessarily a bad thing. Governments often borrow money to invest in future needs. And right now, temporary deficit spending on things like building new highways and tax cuts are playing an important role to support our economic recovery. But over the long term, rising debt threatens to harm our economy and lead to lower living standards. The first consequence of taking on debt is the need to pay interest on the amount we borrow. As debt increases, interest costs will take up a larger percentage of our budget, leaving less money for other budgetary priorities. The interest rates we pay on our debt will also go up the more we have to borrow, as we need to attract more and more money from lenders. This will lead to higher consumer interest rates on everything from mortgages to car loans. In addition to the direct interest costs of borrowing, there is also an indirect cost from so much government borrowing when the economy is not in a recession. Borrowing on the scale currently projected for the future will suck up capital that could be put to more productive use in the private sector. This will lead to declining productivity and slower economic growth. The key factors driving our long-term borrowing needs are the combination of an aging population, healthcare cost growth, and a current tax policy inadequately suited to pay for future spending. Aging will lead to increased spending on the country's largest entitlement programs, Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid, as more citizens become eligible for the programs and there are less workers paying taxes to support those receiving benefits. Healthcare inflation drives the problem because it causes Medicare and Medicaid costs to grow much more quickly than economic growth and federal budget resources can keep up with. Inadequate tax policy drives the problem because debt grows whenever we spend more than we take in, and it is doubtful that our current tax system could ever raise enough money to cover projected spending increases without dramatically harming economic growth. While no one knows what level of debt will lead to economic disaster, there is universal agreement that if we allow the debt to grow 6 times larger than it is now, to 300% of the nation's economy, as it is currently projected to do by 2040, we will cease to be an economic superpower. Furthermore, most economists feel that the upper range for sustainable economic growth is around 60% of GDP. Since we will reach that level by the end of this year, and debt will grow to over 100% of GDP within the decade, that makes it all the more important for us to act sooner rather than later. We need to start finding agreement about steps to reduce our deficits in the years ahead, so that once our economy is stronger and the recession is behind us, we can follow through on our plans to ensure a strong, sustainable fiscal future for our nation. The sooner we act, the less drastic needed changes will have to be.